Congressman, so good to have you today. I'm not sure how much of that you heard, but any response or reaction from your fellow Florida congressman?
Well, I was actually on the House floor during that discussion, so many things were said. I was standing next to Byron Donalds and Lauren Boebert, as well as for Matt Gaetz on the other side of me, as we try to have this conversation with the Speaker, advising what we feel prioritizes the three key things: America, Americans, and American interest. I think that we also try to advise the Speaker in what is best for the institution, what is best for the conference, and what is best for the country. To kind of quote Matt Gaetz, and I echo the sentiment in every way, is we are losing confidence, and it's diminishing by the day on what Speaker Johnson is willing to do to try and go ahead and protect the Republic.
So where do you stand, one, on this, if it comes to pass, a motion to vacate? Where do you stand? I heard you say that you're losing confidence, but would you vote to actually oust Johnson?
I mean, I'm not there right now. I will tell you that I think that if you look at the direction of things, and you know, my colleague laid it out well, you know, Speaker Johnson would vote against Ukraine funding. He understood the priorities of America, which is economy and securing our border, and we're waning on this. And we're starting to think about the ideas that, you know, another $60 billion to Ukraine isn't somehow beneficial to America, when we know for a fact that the EU sanctions chief, Dan O'Sullivan, said that they have 190 billion euro in frozen Russian assets that they're making $3.5 billion in profit on. Why are we not calling and talking to the EU, who are at a greater threat of the fall of Ukraine than America, and allowing them to step up and do what they're supposed to be doing? And I have to argue the fact that our border is the priority. We have 70 to 100,000 people dying of fentanyl overdose. We have angel families that are going and increasing by the day, as we saw with Laken Riley, or even one of our own Florida House representatives, Keon Michael, whose son was killed by a guy who had been deported 3 times. We have to prioritize America and American economy, because our economic deficiency, our default, is the greatest domestic threat to America.
Congressman, I take your point that Speaker Johnson's perspective on Ukraine and funding the war in Ukraine has changed, but I want to play for you something that he said during an impassioned speech. Take a listen.
I think that Vladimir Putin would continue to march through Europe if he were allowed. I think he might go to the Balkans next. I think he might have a showdown with Poland or one of our NATO allies. To put it bluntly, I would rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys.
So Congressman, my question is, you are a veteran yourself. You have been to the front lines of Ukraine since Russia's invasion. Your reaction to what he said there?
It's a completely false premise. Vladimir Putin is not going to do anything which is going to actually enact Article 5 of NATO. You're not going to have a global war at a scale
How can you be
that
so
Putin
sure?
will have to face. Because Putin, while he actually may be reckless in the eyes and he wants that perception, think about how protective and controlled he's been, and even utilizing artillery and other things to not impact other nations, not to mention the fact that Poland's military and their defense mechanism has been building up at a faster rate than Russia. Russia's at 13% inflation, the highest they've ever seen. They're at a stalemate for a war that they say they can win in months, and you think they're now going to go ahead, and when they couldn't beat Ukraine, they're going to start challenging NATO nations? This makes no sense whatsoever.
Do you wonder, Congressman, or do you worry? President Trump said he supports Speaker Johnson. Do you worry about the message that this sends, if this comes to pass, if there's a vote on whether to oust Johnson? What message this sends to Republican voters? What message this sends to voters in your district? I mean, he's only been Speaker for 6 months, and of course we know what happened to McCarthy. I mean, do you worry about that?
Well, of course I worry about it. I worry about the conference. I worry about upcoming elections. I worry about the optics, but I worry more about the American people. You know, at the end of the day, I am here to represent the people of Florida's 7th District, and I'm going to continue to try and protect them and put America first. And while I hope the Speaker does the right thing, while I want the Speaker to be successful, and while I didn't support the last motion, I want to make sure that he understands the priorities of America, which is our border and our economy. It's not Ukraine.
And last question here. I mean, he said to my colleague Jake Tapper, Speaker Mike Johnson said that he couldn't get the border deal in this round. It's just sort of the practical nature of politics. He has a one-seat majority here. It just wouldn't work, practically speaking. Your response?
Well, first off, I think that they're trying to talk to the ideas that having our border to this bill would somehow not be germane, even though H.R. 2 is sitting in the Senate right now. We could have requested that the Senate take up H.R. 2 for consideration before we're willing to pass their supplemental or review it. We could have also done things like put H.R. 1 as a policy rider, which would essentially make this entire thing a pay-for. That's the Low Cost Energy Act, which would guarantee domestic security and domestic energy production while simultaneously guaranteeing that we stop adversarial reliance and start getting things like the cost of goods goods down, start being able to heat and cool our homes at a cheaper level, start getting our fuel costs down for hardworking everyday Americans to go back and forth to work or drop their kids off. These are the priorities. So we should be thinking about policy writers if we're going to push these bills on the floor, or forcing and jamming the Senate to do what is right, not continuing to jam ourselves and destroy our conference.
Okay, Congressman Cory Mills, we appreciate the time today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.